The contents of this program may not necessarily represent the views of Ummah Channel.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Dear viewers, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I am Shahzad Ahmad Qadri and you're watching An Evening With. Dear viewers, according to the teachings of our beloved Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa baraka wa sallam, every child that is born a Muslim. It doesn't matter which background, which religious family he is born into, he is born a Muslim. And thereafter, he adopts the religion of his parents, of his family. The Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa baraka wa sallam in the cave of Hira, when he got his first revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala via Hazrat Jibreel alayhi salam, he came home to his wife, Hazrat Hatijatul Kubra raziyallahu ta'ala anha, and told her about his experience in the cave. Without any questions, he accepted what he said, because 40 years of his life, he had never lied. He had always spoken the truth. There was no reason for not believing in him. Thereafter, when the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa baraka wa sallam relayed the same message to Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq raziyallahu ta'ala anhu, he also, without any questions, believed in him and accepted Islam. Hazrat Hatijatul Kubra raziyallahu ta'ala anha was the first female who accepted Islam, and Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq in the males was the first to come into the fold of Islam. I can understand in today's age, if somebody at the age of 40 or maybe 50 came into the folds of Islam, because he has time to study. He could have studied the religion for 10 years, maybe 20 years, and felt that it was the right religion. It was the true religion. But somebody accepting Islam at the ages of 17, 18 or 19, that's something that I fail to understand. And today I have somebody with me who at a very young age, alhamdulillah, accepted Islam and not only wanted to be part of it, but gain knowledge, is gaining knowledge, still at a very young age. Imam Esa Handerson is with me today. I welcome him to the program. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah, Shahzad Bhai. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm very well. Thank you for coming into An Evening With. It is my pleasure that you're here today.
Barakallahu feek. My pleasure, my pleasure.
Like I said, if you were at the ages of 40 or 50, you could have had 10, 15, 20, even 30 years to study the religion and then felt that this was the right religion for you. At what age did you accept Islam?
18.
And at that age, it wasn't just a matter of changing a car or changing your house. It was changing your life, coming into a religion where there might be a lot of barriers. There will be a lot of heartache, a lot of mind ache, and you might not be accepted as you were in your own family. Peer pressure, family pressure, friends, colleagues. They would have all been questioning you and saying, what are you doing? What was it that made you accept Islam?
I mean, it's a very interesting question because at the time I wasn't ready to accept Islam. It was just sort of a series of events that accumulated in the Shahada, so I certainly wasn't ready. But I guess the question is more when is one ready? There's been people who have taken their shahada, and may Allah preserve them upon the way that they've entered. But there are people whose shahadat I've taken who knew very little, but they say encountered one facet of the Prophet ﷺ, and that was it for them. Then there are people who I've taken their shahada who have studied for weeks, months, years. They know many aspects of Islamic theology. They know many aspects of our history. Some even know aspects of our usul, which is spectacular. But you know, they're not ready to be Muslim. They may know it's the truth, but they're not ready. And then just something switched, and they became ready. You cited a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that every child is born on fitrah. You see, fitrah, I guess, when one enters Islam in a sort of, in a way that is pure, I mean, there's not really many ways you can enter Islam in an impure way. But obviously, if you have ulterior motives, and I'm not talking about, for example, marriage. I mean, there's a bit of a, within our community sometimes people tend to kick up a fuss and a stink, or he only became Muslim for marriage. I mean, that certainly doesn't apply to me. I'm still not married, but 4 years later, and that's not an invite for a rishta either. But the point is, I know people who have become Muslim for marriage, and at the end of the day, if this is how Allah Almighty guides them, then so be it. But when I talk about an impure way, I talk about people who are purposefully choosing to become Muslim so that they can deceive those around them. So they haven't really become Muslim. It's sort of like the sunnah of the munafiqeen. But this hadith you quoted really brings it home, especially for me, because I didn't really know anything, to be honest. I knew facets. I knew a few scraps. I mean, I still know a few scraps, but I knew even less at that time. And what I found is that when you, what is fitrah? What is fitrah? Every child is born on fitrah. What is fitrah? Fitrah is natural disposition. So for example, you're naturally predisposed to wanting to drink. It's how your body is created, it's how you're programmed. You're naturally predisposed to want to eat. To want to interact in society. These are your natural, I guess one could call them created ways. It's how you are meant to be. It's to imagine life without these things would be almost alien. In the same way that is what fitrah is. Fitrah is that natural predisposition to understanding and accepting that there is only one God. And when you enter that, irrespective of how you enter it, as long as it's not to destroy it, is if you enter that with goodness, no matter how it's manifested, it's almost like you connect with something. And it's a bit hard for Muslims who have been born Muslims to understand this, but it's almost like you connect with something. In the same way that when you're thirsty, you satiate, you satisfy that thirst by drinking. In the same way, when you enter Islam, you satisfy a different kind of thirst. And when that thirst is satisfied, it's noted. You can note it. Right at that moment, you note it. I guess the closest I could describe it, because I felt it once, but I've never felt it again. Maybe there are people who have, because I know we say, did he revert to Islam? Did he convert to Islam? Is he a new Muslim? What are we called? I mean, I think all are correct in and of their own self, whatever the individual chooses to be known as. There are a lot of people who sometimes get, as I say in English, they get their knickers in a twist over this. But the fact of the matter is, however one is comfortable calling themselves. But maybe new Muslims or people who become Muslim would maybe differ with me on this, but I've never felt that feeling again. I think the closest I could feel, which perhaps Muslims who are born Muslim could relate to, is, you know, when you're, say, praying salah or you're doing ibadat, and you have that feeling within you. It's very hard to describe. Almost like a light feeling, like you feel, it's hard to put it into words. You understand what I'm saying?
I understand.
It's a bit like that.
Brother, it's an enormous task when, like I said, there was family of the Prophet ﷺ, like Hazrat Khadijatul Kubra, and then his the most dearest companion, Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq, and then there was others such as Hazrat Umar Farooq radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, who was not the family, but Hazrat Hamza radiyallahu ta'ala anhu was the family. They accepted Islam far later. I mean, I'm just trying to get into your mind. What kind of a religious background or family were you born into? How were your parents and your brothers and sisters? Just let's talk a little bit about them. And have they got? Were they religious?
So, again, if I may use my own English for this, you know, English people, what we do is, after a Sunday dinner, anything left over, we stick it in a frying pan and we fry it and we just eat it. For the life of me, I can't remember the name. It tastes very good though. And it's basically, that's what my family is like, religiously speaking. They're like everything stuck together. So you have one extreme of atheism, which is what I came from. Then you have the other extreme of believing, complete belief, resolved belief. Then you have people who don't care. Then you have people who care, but it's not factual, doesn't really matter.
Was that not confusing?
Not for me, because the thing that differs between our society as Muslims and the society that I came from, because I'm still part of that society, but the society I came from, we have this, and I think Muslims would learn a great lot from this example. We have a lot of tolerance. Now, I'm not promoting that we tolerate deviance, God forbid, but what I mean is that people are very focused on themselves. And yes, in some ways it's a negative way. But I think the problem with a lot of our Muslim community nowadays is that they don't care enough about themselves, they're too busy focusing on others. And the problem is when you start diverting tension away from yourself, and you start pointing, as someone once, I can't remember who, but someone once told me a very wise thing. They said, when you point the finger, you forget that you've got three pointing back. In the same way that our community now sort of went down this destructive, very self-destructive path of pointing the finger. But they don't realize that whilst they're pointing away from filth, they're merely reflecting themselves almost. And we have to focus on ourselves a lot. And that's why it wasn't confusing, because my family, don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting that they took it well. They really didn't. And I think it's not because of my changing. They didn't take it well because it's Islam. If I'd become a Buddhist, they would have took it better. Because, you know, Buddhism, you don't hear anything about Buddhism. If I became a Hindu or a Sikh or anything, they would have took it a lot better. But at that time, Islam, and Islam still is heavily in the media. So their sort of natural perception was, all right, okay, hold on a minute. It's a Pakistani religion. Why is he become Pakistani? Or why is he following this medieval thing?
Was there a lot of friends that were the Pakistani friends?
Yeah, I had some influential friends, no doubt.
Is that who they blame?
No, because my family are close to them.
Right.
My family are good with them. They didn't blame that. They weren't angry at my choice. Don't get me wrong. They weren't angry at my choice. They were confused about it, and that confusion led to fear. And that fear led to anger. So that's how it manifested, the confusion. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm still very careless. I make huge mistakes now because I don't think sometimes. But at that time I was more so careless. So for example, after I took my Shahada, I just walked into my mum and dad's bedroom, and I can still remember this now, and I said, guess what? And they went, well, I'm a Muslim now. And you can imagine that, your 18-year-old son has just walked in your bedroom at 11:30 at night and just said this.
What was the reaction?
Oh, it was terrible. Oh, my word. It was an awful reaction. Bloody awful.
Your mother or your father, any of them religious,
actually.
or were they both atheists?
My dad's atheist, but
right.
My dad's not. I don't think my dad isn't atheist out of sort of, right, I'm choosing atheism because I can't see God around or anything like that. I think my dad's atheism is sort of fueled with a tragedy that happened a number of years ago. Whereas my mum, where that tragedy led my dad and myself towards away from religion. With my mum, it sent her towards it. So my mum went through a period of being a spiritualist, you know, into the psychics and whatnot. And then, you know, after that sort of period, she just resolved and, you know, follows a very mass-held thinking, which is I'm a good person, I want to contribute how I can, and I don't hurt anyone else, and I believe in one God.
Okay.
That's it. And if that identity is Christian, she'll take the identity of Christianity. There's no problem for her.
So what was the reaction then?
Oh, man. Oh, dear me. It wasn't good. They didn't react very well at all. They were very upset. They were very angry. They weren't happy at all with it. for a few weeks it was like this. My sister was the same. They were all very upset and very angry. But
How many brothers and
I don't
sisters have
blame
you
them.
got?
I had an older brother, and I've got a younger sister. But alhamdulillah, it was about 3 weeks. And then, if I may make the joke, it's a bit sort of crude, but you know, when they realized I hadn't blown anything up, I think they calmed down. Because that was, honestly, my mum was very stressed.
How long did it take them to accept?
A few weeks, just a few weeks. My mum was my mum was more upset from confusion, because all of a sudden, and don't get me wrong, again, because the thing is, I was, at the time, I accepted Islam, and I became sort of, I accepted Islam in a Salafi sort of way. And the thing is, when you accept Islam, you just have this unreal vigor and energy to just go out there and convert the world. And you will learn all of Ahmed Didat's books, you listen to all of Dr. Zakir Naik's lectures, you do all of these things to try and argue with people, to give them what you have. But then, as the longer you stay Muslim, the more you realize, actually, that's not the way to do it. And it hurts me when I see that we have these brothers who stand in the streets telling everyone they're going to go to hell. That really hurts me. Because it doesn't inspire love, it inspires hatred. But the way of the Prophet ﷺ was to inspire love. People loved him. And it was that love that brought people to Islam through the guidance of Allah Almighty.
Who did you initially listen to, or which texts did you read to make that mind up?
It's funny because I didn't really do much preliminary research. I was one of those people where I didn't have much of a basis. I wasn't ready to accept Islam. I remember being in a certain sort of restaurant in my area, and when I was asked to become Muslim, I'd given a number of reasons as to why I didn't want to be Muslim. And then it sort of went from there, and I became Muslim. And I guess I didn't, because of my youth, I mean, I'm still young now, I'm only 4 years older, but I didn't have a lot of wisdom. So, for example, now from my own experience, when people accept Islam, the very first thing I advise is don't rush home and tell your parents. Just ease them into it gently. First, transform yourself, make yourself better, and show them that you're becoming better, but you still are who you are. Because this was the main thing my parents were worried about. They thought that I was going to come home and be this completely transformed individual who they couldn't connect to anymore, who they couldn't recognize anymore, who was just intent on lecturing them. And that was mainly my fault, because I didn't really work in the right way to establish that I'm still the same person.
Did that create a distance?
Yeah, it did, no doubt. My parents won't say it did, because naturally the parents' love for the child, they're not going to say you distance yourself from us. But there were many occasions, you know, when you have arguments with people and you say things in anger, there were many occasions when they would say to me, you know, you're not the same person anymore, look what Islam has done to you. And in those situations, I should have been cool, but I didn't. I sort of retaliated and said, no, it hasn't changed me. I'm still the same person. Why can't you see that? Why are you struggling to understand that? But again, I didn't make things easier, because I was at that point, I was considering going to Durham University to study biomedicine. Now, a couple of months after this, I was saying to my mom, I want to go to this certain institute to study, so I can go abroad and study Islam. So all of a sudden, for my mother, it was like, okay, hold on, so he's just become this person. I've just started to deal with the fact that he is Muslim. And now all of a sudden, he's telling me he doesn't want to, because at that time I wanted to be a doctor. Now he's telling me he doesn't want to be a doctor anymore. He doesn't want to get a proper, like, because in her eyes, Islam, anything pertaining to Islam was not a proper degree. He doesn't want to get a proper degree anymore, and now he wants to go abroad. So all of a sudden, this created a huge problem again. So I resolved it by just saying, look, I gave her both options. I said, I really don't want to go and do this course, as in the biomedicine. I really don't want to do it. I tried to pull the guilt trip, but it failed. I really don't want to do it. But I really want to do this one, but whatever you tell me to do, I'll do. So she looks at me, she goes, go to Durham. Like that, finished. So I said, right, damn, okay, fine. So I went to Durham, and I'm very glad I went to Durham, I must say. That was the better decision. I think that was the best decision to have done.
It gave him a bit of time to...
It wasn't...
And yourself to...
There's that, but there's also the fact that if you know, when you look... It's funny, because people sometimes don't understand God's wisdom when certain things happen. But it's only when you look back and you connect the events do you realize that you're only here because of that event. So I tell you now, I kid you not, I am only sat here without negating that Allah's will determines everything, Allah's qudrat determines everything, etc., etc., etc. I don't want anyone to start passing fatwa on me on Facebook. But in the sense that, in light of all of those theological aspects, the fact of the matter is, if it wasn't for my mum saying no to where I wanted to go and sending me to Durham, I wouldn't be sat here today.
Allahu Akbar.
You see? And it really was that decision. There was no other decision. I wouldn't have been where I've traveled around the world if it wasn't for that decision. I wouldn't have met the people I've met if it wasn't for that decision. I wouldn't have met my teachers if it wasn't for that decision. That decision quite literally put me here today. But it's only in reflection do I realize that that was better for me. And this is the thing, isn't it? Allah gives you what's best for you, even if at the time you don't.
The period of
appreciate
transition, apart from your parents and your sister, I didn't get the reaction of your sister. What did she say? And then your close friends, what did they have to say?
My sister, again, followed my mum's reaction. But I don't think my sister's reaction was in and of itself fueled by her own thinking. I think that when she saw how distressed my mum was, that's what made her distressed. And then instead of thinking, because the thing is, when you're distressed, you don't think logically.
Yeah.
So instead of her thinking, hold on a minute, he's not going to do something stupid, he's not an idiot, he's not going to do something stupid, he's not going to allow any dodgy people to influence him.
Yeah.
He's not going to really change. What I should be doing here is just saying to him, look, just chill out, he's going to be all right. But instead, because she saw mum distressed, she became distressed. And instead of thinking, hold on, mum shouldn't be distressed, let me try and sort that out, she thought, mum is distressed because Alex has done this. And as a result of that, she became distressed at me and angry at me. Now, my dad didn't care. It was really funny. My dad goes, look, son, as long as you don't blow yourself up, I'm fine with whatever you want to do. And he was really serious.
This is the concept that the people out there have now of Muslims, that they blow themselves up and they do all sorts of stupid things.
Yeah.
But that's unfortunate. It's a minority, but they say that good word is hard to spread and the bad word
is very easy to spread.
Very easy to spread. Brother Esa, we're going to come back after the break and I'm going to ask you the actual time when you accepted Islam, on whose hand did you accept Islam?
Okay.
And there'll be a lot more interesting questions that will be posed to Brother Esa, inshallah, and I'm sure he's got very good answers for it. We'll see you shortly after the break. Wassalamu alaikum.
They were my goals, so I had direction. But what I mean is, in between those goals, it was just living. And even when you get to those goals, it's just living. You realize you've achieved something, it's just living. And you never think about the end goal. You never think you're going to die. Because even now, let's be honest, we're sat here, most of the people watching at home are sat. And what are they thinking? They feel invincible. They're sat, most people will be sat watching this without wudu,